Marvel's Spider-Man 2's ending was near perfect, an epic conclusion to a 3-game saga that wrapped up its plots succinctly, gave Miles the space to breathe, and left enough tantalizing teasers to get fans hyped for future releases. I was enamored with Marvel's Spider-Man 2, and that ending really helped solidify it as one of my all-time favorite games. It also helped that Peter's journey across the 2 games he's actually a part of is fantastic, something that both captivated my burgeoning interest in the Spider-Man comic book universe and encouraged me to look deeper into it. I was actually rather happy when Peter handed over the reins to Miles, especially as Insomniac had been teasing it since the first game, and was finally feeling like he could settle down with MJ and put his normal life ahead of superheroing. After all, Marvel's Spider-Man 2 proved Miles to be a capable, selfless, and brave hero, the kind that New York needs now that Peter is gone. Well, it turns out that Peter Parker isn't gone, and in fact, is likely to return, much to my surprise and unfortunately chagrin. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 ends with Peter deciding that he's going to quit being Spider-Man, promoting Miles to being more than second fiddle. It's a great moment, one that helps emphasize the growth that Miles has gone through, including the death of his father and overcoming his lust for revenge, and rewards fans for embarking on his journey of redemption and maturity. It also puts Peter to rest, something that is well deserved after the past 2 mainline games focused on his relationship with MJ and the stress that his being Spider-Man was putting on it. Sure, Peter got a nifty holiday during the events of Miles Morales, but it's hardly enough to really give the friendly neighborhood hero a proper rest. I, for one, feel like this ending, coupled with everything else explored throughout both Marvel's Spider-Man and Marvel's Spider-Man 2, heavily hinted at Peter finally actually leaving and Miles taking over the protagonist's duties. Well, it looks like I was wrong to assume that, as Yuri Lowenthal, the voice actor extraordinaire and the voice behind Peter, has confirmed that Peter is returning in Spider-Man 3. In an interview with The Direct, Lowenthal explained that while he can't discuss much about his involvement in the 3rd game, Peter will absolutely be making a return and won't be relegated to the couch. Of course, I never thought that Peter would never return, but the way Lowenthal talks about it definitely infers that he's going to be more than just a cameo. I had figured that maybe Miles would turn to him for advice or pop around for dinner, but it looks like Peter will be much more involved. In fact, back in 2024, Lowenthal told Variety that while I think that Peter would love to believe that he can just turn it off and not be Spider-Man anymore and live a completely normal life, I don't think that's what's going to happen now. So Peter fans can definitely rest assured that he'll be popping up in the 3rd game in a significant capacity. One can only assume that he'll continue to be a playable character, but likely take on a smaller role than he did in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. As much as I love Peter's portrayal in these games and Lowenthal's phenomenal performance, although I'm not a fan of his controversial character model change, I have to say that his inclusion in Marvel's Spider-Man 3 is somewhat disappointing. I have no doubt in my mind that Marvel's Spider-Man 3 should have left Peter behind. Not only did he hand over the reins to Miles, as aforementioned, thus putting his trust in him completely, but there was also the tease of Cindy Moon in the game's end credits. Cindy becomes Silk, who is one of the many spider people in the comics. She is, at least in the comics, bitten by the same spider as Peter, and thus gains a lot of the same powers, although she is largely faster and can create organic webs. It looks like the game will be taking her character in a different direction, but her reveal at the end of the 2nd game absolutely means she'll become Silk eventually, in whatever form that takes. I had assumed she'd get a spin-off like Miles, or at least appear in the now non-existent Marvel's Spider-Man 2 DLC, but it looks like Insomniac is saving her for the main event. That's fine, and I'm glad she was introduced in the first place, but it is ultimately what makes Peter's continued appearance all the more frustrating. Having to play as Peter and Miles while also learning about Cindy and the dozens of other unresolved Marvel's Spider-Man threads, such as Carnage and Norman Osborn becoming the Green Goblin, sounds like a lot, especially if they introduce the characters associated with Cindy, such as Ezekiel Sims and Morlun. Having 3 Spider people to play as, or at least be central characters, is a lot, and I'm not wholly convinced it will work as well in video game form as it did in the Spider-Verse films. Frankly, Miles only works as well as he did because his spin-off game gave him over 10 hours to shine. Players really got to know him and his struggles, something that Insomniac will want to explore further in the next game. Cindy won't be able to get a word in if players are being bombarded with Miles and Peter's character development, especially if this game is to be her origin story. Even without her, Peter being a playable character feels like a slap in the face to the second game's incredible ending. And as I've stressed, I really like Peter Parker in the Marvel's Spider-Man series. I definitely want him to return eventually, but I'm not sure that this is the right game. With everything that Insomniac is building up, it seems like a lot to have players try and care about 3 different characters. Marvel's Spider-Man gave players control of Peter and introduced Miles. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 gave players control of both and ended with Miles. Marvel's Spider-Man 3 should have players play as Miles and introduce Silk. It feels like a natural progression and a great way of introducing each character. Then, the 4th game could end with Peter returning for the ultimate showdown against the Green Goblin or Carnage or whichever big bad from his rogues gallery Insomniac wants to pick, and have players control all 3 heroes that they've grown to care about. Putting Peter to rest for just 1 game, outside of the Miles spin-off, of course, would give everyone else a chance to shine. They deserve the spotlight, as Peter has had it for more than 60 years. Fortunately, as much as it irks me a little that Peter is returning, I have every faith that Insomniac can pull this off. All 3 of the Marvel's Spider-Man games have been phenomenal, and this next entry will likely be too. Other Spider-Man media have proven that it still works even when there are dozens of them on screen at once, so hopefully Insomniac can make it work too. I just hope that Miles and Cindy get the time they need in Marvel's Spider-Man 3 and Peter sticks to his word and stays on the sidelines.